We are back inside City Hall talking about a new proposal for municipal IDs with Brooklyn City Councilman Carlos Menchaca, Queens Councilman Daniel Dromm, and Stephen Choi from the New York Immigration Coalition. And folks, when we look at the mayor's proposal, it's for a safe, open city for immigrants. But that's something like, I think, what, 40% of the city now? Aren't you guys and the mayor, are you sort of pushing on a rope? I mean, where is the anti-immigrant sentiment in New York City? I haven't seen any.
Let me tell you, Earl, today, when I got into the office, I received a phone call because they saw and they knew that this bill was going to be introduced today. And they said that we should kill all immigrants. Who? Somebody called my office anonymously and said that. So we still have a lot of anti-immigrant sentiment out there that we need to fight. And that's a fact of life, unfortunately.
And I think that the goal here for this piece of legislation, and really for what the City Council is going to want to do, is we want to open up the doors of City Council for every New Yorker. If you live here, you're a New Yorker, and you should be proud to be here. And so what we want to do is make sure that all our communities are kind of connected to the things that we're doing, and this card does that.
And Errol, one thing I would say is that just because you don't have the kind of scale and volume of anti-immigrant forces doesn't necessarily mean that you have as open doors as we need for immigrant communities. I mean, immigrants are 40% of the city, and when you count immigrants and their offspring, we're a majority. So, you know, just because there's not anti-immigrant forces lined up outside the gates of City Hall doesn't mean that there could be more avenues and better avenues for immigrants and their children to be able to contribute as much as they can to the city.
Yeah, it's interesting because I always, you know, you sit and you try and strain your brain. I'm like, okay, what transaction or activity in New York would make any difference to me what the status of the person in front of me is, you know, whether they're a customer or a viewer or anything else. But I know that people do feel strongly about this. Let me ask you about something else, because it's in the mayor's plan, and I imagine the council might get to it at some point, which is secure communities. This is the federal program that says that if somebody is in jail for whatever reason, even if it's a minor offense, you've got to check, you've got to stop and sort of cross-check their national status with the federal government. This often leads to arrests. Sometimes it leads to deportations. The city's stance is that they don't want to cooperate with it, but the federal government kind of speaks pretty clearly on this and pretty loudly, right, with their dollars, if nothing else?
No, actually, they say that there's no law, we've met with them as well, that would force us to cooperate with them in that sense. We passed a law last year and the year before that called ICE on Rikers, which would prevent us from having to turn anyone over to federal authorities for the 48 hours that they are able to try to throw down a detainer. So that has been very successful, as a matter of fact. We have helped over 1,000 families avoid that type of deportation. There was just a report that I read in the newspapers the other day of a 20-year-old who was picked up on a marijuana charge, and when he was brought to Rikers, ICE clamped down on him. Now his whole life, through no fault of his own, is in danger because of that arrest.
And we're seeing this situation happen all across the state, not just in New York City, but in Long Island and Westchester and the upstate regions. And so that's why we fought and made sure that in 2011, Governor Cuomo was actually able to say, we're not going to participate in secure communities. And I think what we need to do is we need to keep up that fight. You know, there have been more than 2 million immigrants deported underneath President Obama. We need to do everything that we can to stop those deportations, including continuing to push back against secure communities and really get rid of that program. And I think that's something that we can do.
Is there a national movement afoot? I know you've got sort of counterpart organizations all over the country.
Absolutely. You know, so we work within a national movement called FIRM, the Fair Immigration Reform Movement. So we work with folks in Florida, in California, in Massachusetts. And so that is one of the things that we've been pushing back on. And there are other allies in the fight. The Dreamers are in the fight. The National Day Labor Organizing Network is in the fight. And so they just had an event on April 5th. And we're going to have a big rally tomorrow where we're going to say we need to stop these deportations. We need to stop them now. And we really need immigration reform. But if we don't get that, we need to move forward and just put an end to secure communities and put an end to deportations.
And then finally, in our last minute, when the DREAM Act was brought up at the state Senate level and it was brought up for a vote and it failed, much of the argument was it wasn't about the money, because it was, I think, what, $25 million out of a $130 billion budget. But what some of the legislators said was that, you know, we can't in good conscience extend these benefits to non-citizens when there's this whole long line of kids who are here and their status is not even in question why don't they go first? What's the answer to that?
Well, really what I think we needed to do was reframe it so that all our kids and our youth have opportunities. And that's, I think, where we just failed in that conversation about these benefits that were gone to all our youth. And they all deserve that opportunity for college. And this is what this would have done. The DREAM Act would have given that opportunity. It was just failed leadership, I think, at the state level. But we're gonna keep on fighting on that front, but also on immigration reform.
Because at the end of the day, it's a relatively minor. I mean, it's important to the people involved, but it's relatively minor
and
in the whole conversation.
And it gives an equal opportunity for every kid that wants to be a successful citizen in our city. That opportunity.
I just want to clarify this, because this is such a mistruth, let's call it, that has really sort of become pervasive, and I think we need to address this. This New York State DREAM Act does not take a single cent away from any person who's eligible to apply for tuition assistance. It doesn't take a single cent away. What it does is just expands the pool.
Sure.
It just makes it available for a larger group of people, but there's no decrease. We're not taking money out of any citizen's hands. This is something that needs to be disproved, and as Carlos Menchaca mentioned, we need to have leadership on the state to be able to say that.
Okay, as well as a conversation involving, education is its own reward, right? It's not about taking from somebody else. Anyhow, folks, we'll be watching in the council tomorrow. Thank you for coming by. Very good to see you, Stephen Choi. We are going to take a short break now. Coming up, the state budget is usually hammered out behind closed doors, far away from public eyes. Straight ahead, we'll get an insider's look at the process with our own State House reporter, Zach Fink. Later tonight, Congressman Charles Rangel has the support of both of New York's senators for his re-election. But how about Curtis Lewa and Herson Barrero? Find out what they have to say in our always entertaining political rundown. We're back in a minute.